Martin Luther once said, "I felt that I had been born anew and that the gates of heaven had been opened. The whole of Scripture gained a new meaning, and from that point on, the phrase, the justice of God, no longer filled me with hatred, but rather became unspeakably sweet by virtue of a great love." Luther had been studying the Bible, St. Paul's letter to the Romans to be exact, when he finally came to understand that it was not up to human beings to make themselves worthy in the eyes of a righteous God. Luther tried. He quit his study of law. He entered a monastery and was so rigorously observant that his health suffered. The word of God only seemed to bring condemnation. It tormented him. But in an instant, that all changed. From hatred to love, from despair to joy, from death to life. Here was the gospel, the good news. We receive forgiveness of sin and become righteous before God out of grace for Christ's sake through faith. Luther knew he had to get the word out, literally. He laid hold of technology, the printing press, and modernized communication, translating the Bible into the vernacular. Ordinary people could now read or at least hear God's promise of love, freedom, and grace. Scripture was no longer the property of the educated elite. God's saving message could speak to all people. In a way, Luther's translation of the Bible, completed 500 years ago this year, combined with the technology of his day, made it possible to tell the old story in a new way. The gospel has not changed. The world has. The ELCA is rooted in tradition, the saving love of God given as a gift, grace. But we must become radically relevant. People today might not use the vocabulary of the church, sin or redemption or grace, but people are still looking for meaning and belonging and love. We need to take a page out of Luther's playbook and translate the gospel into the cultural vernacular. We're moving toward future church, and we have a goal to engage 1 million new, young, diverse people by the end of this decade, not to fill pews and offering plates, but to welcome them into the way of Jesus, where they and we find community, justice, and love. If we have experienced the infinite and intimate love of Jesus, why wouldn't we want to share that with everyone? We pray that the Holy Spirit would activate each of us for this life-giving work. We can tell the old story in a new way.
Bishop, how much time do I have? Just want to be mindful. Let me know, and I'll set my alarm. I feel like I'm at home. There's so many of you that I have served with, walked with, I have dined with, cried with, that this is such an important opportunity for me to be with you today and share a little bit more about our journey together. And I thank you so much for the invitation. So I have served as a churchwide organization for 11 years. I came into our denomination as the program director for racial justice. I moved into director for racial justice. And a year ago, I moved into the portfolio of the senior director for diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is a brand new position for our denomination. We're about a year into this work. And coming in without the credentials, I was given a year to really ramp up, to become on par with other organizations. Many Fortune 500 companies and beyond have picked up the DEI work, especially since the murder of George Floyd. It has become even more important in our culture, in our work communities, in our organizations, to see the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And for me, doing racial justice work, those were always values that were part of the alignment of the work I did anyway. But now it's my chance to go deeper and to do it intersectionally and to do it more inclusively. And it's difficult for us to do and to define language for the ELCA. And here's the reason why. I represent the church-wide organization, one of the three expressions. We have, oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you about my granddad. I'll tell you about him in a second. But really quickly, we have 410 employees that work the church-wide, and I'll tell you a little bit about them too. But I came into this work 11 years ago because of the person you see on this screen, the shoulders on which I stand, my grandfather, my maternal grandfather. You can see the marker next to his name. He served as NAACP president, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, from 1954 to 1984. And he never received a penny for what he did, but he was a change maker in this country. And if anyone knows the history of the Freedom Summer and the Civil Rights Movement stemming out of Mississippi, starting in 1961, you may know the names of Bob Moses, someone like that, or Fannie Lou Hamer. Can I get some snaps for some of these folks who never got paid, right? Who worked with local people across the community to make change, people who didn't have the resources. And there was something about his faith, even though he's got historical marker there, that is not mentioned in the books of history. It was his passion and his call to strive for justice and peace in all the earth, something that we know as well as Lutherans. And so watching my grandfather in action, a person who has a high school education, become part of change, transformative change, because he loved that agape love, that he wanted better for me and for his grandchildren and his community and his people. And that's what made me come to this church, not to be a token, because I've heard that word, but I want to be clear. I came in this church when I was 5 because of racism. My parents moved into a predominantly white neighborhood. They were the only family of color, and they deserved to be in that neighborhood. But the hidden racism in society, the unwritten racism that you don't see, kept my family out of that community until a program that was formed to integrate neighborhoods that were resistant opened up the opportunity for my parents to move into this community called Windsor, Connecticut. And it's the pastor whose parsonage was 5 doors down from our home, was the one who prayed with my mother and father, walked with them, talked with them. And he said to them, come to my church, be part of this community. I want to walk with you. And the resistance that my parents felt being a young couple with 2 children, not in the South, even though that's where their roots are from, in the North, in Connecticut, in a progressive community that didn't want them there. We came to Christ the King. I grew up in this church, confirmed in this church, experienced racism in our church. I left. I stayed in the wilderness, Bishop. You talked about being in the wilderness. Didn't want to come back. God wrestled with me. Oh, and my arms are just too short to box with God, apparently. Because I came back to the same place, the rock from which I was hewn, where I first met Jesus. He was the white Jesus. Y'all know who I'm talking about. Don't act like you don't know. But I came back and I told my truth to my congregation. You know what they did? They whispered in my ear and they said, can you come on Synod Council? We need you. How about youth leader? Will you speak at the women's luncheon for us, for the ELCA this year? Next thing you know, my name is being forwarded. I'm trying to make change in my congregation. We need to be more diverse. I'm trying to champion the cause. Next thing you know, I'm being asked to serve on church council. Next thing you know, I'm opening my mouth on church council. And then I'm asked to think about coming onto staff. And I did that through prayer because God knew what my heart was about. I wanted to make change in this church. And we don't do it by ourselves. But we need leaders. We need people who are willing to put everything on the line to make that change and to make that commitment. So enough about me. I'm sorry. I just had to tell y'all that. And for the days that I want to leave, my call at Churchwide, because some folks in this room know how hard it's been to deal with the racism and the other forms of injustice and oppression within our organization and in our society, when there is no space of freedom from that, because racism is the gift that just keeps on giving, just like any other form of oppression. And as a person of color that lives at that intersection of identity, there is no off button for me. And if I can't come into a sanctuary, one of your churches, on a Sunday and feel welcomed and affirmed, then I struggle. Why am I here? And that's the truth. And these are the real conversations that I have. And then I lean on my friends like Carmelo Santos, who's sitting right there in the front. And we've cried together, and we've held space in our church-wide office together to be together. And we try to tell the truth to each other and hold each other accountable. And so from the church-wide office of 410 employees of our church that is predominantly white, less than 10% of us within the denomination are persons of color, the church-wide office is 63% white, and it is over 36.6% people of color that make up the church-wide office. They're not all Lutheran, they're not all Christian, but there's something about being in a space that is of service, a community that is walking together in the accompaniment that we do globally, in the ways we show up domestically with each other, that there's something that inspired them to be part of what we are. And so they bring their talents and their gifts and they said yes to be part of the ELCA, even if they've never been to a Synod assembly. Many of them will never become church-wide rep. Only a handful of us have this experience to be in room and community with all of you. So I'm going to try my best to do as much service to the 410 people who serve this church. And if you want to see the breakdown around race and gender, because those are the two commitments we have as a church, are towards racial justice, gender justice. The breakdown is we are primarily a female-led organization. Those are the facts. The top leadership of this organization, starting with our presiding bishop, are white and female. Those are the optics of our denomination. And so if the leadership at the top is not representative of all the gifts of diversity, we've got our own work to do at the church-wide office, which is why we had to create the diversity, equity, and inclusion work for us. We can't manage all 65 synods. That's not even our work. We're called to be in a relationship with our 65 synods. And we can't tell 8,900 congregations what to do, but we can be responsible for our work. And we are just scratching the surface. I told you I'm a year into this. My learning to be on par, to join with what other leaders are doing, we have roads ahead of us, stretch ahead of us to do. But I am going to find some places of hope in this story, of holding the mirror up to us and telling our truth. What you see in front of you is four leaders of color, that in 2016 approached a microphone, one of them approached a microphone and said, this church has not reached its diversity goals of 10% within 30 years of its existence. We're supposed to have hit that mark within our first 10 years. Didn't do it, right? And they said, we want more action and we want to have more voice. As a result of that, in 2019, working with them, myself and other colleagues at Churchwide, we did some assessment work and we found some places that we could leverage voice and some decision making. And they brought those recommendations back to the Churchwide Assembly in 2019. And what you see on the photo in front of you, what you see is from the Churchwide Assembly stage are those four leaders that brought something forward to this church. Bishop, you mentioned the word about power, and I'm just going to use the strength in numbers. This was a collective action. This church has much wisdom from people of color when they actually listen to us. The biggest changes that have occurred in this church is because people of color continue to champion. We haven't left. We're not going anywhere. We're going to continue to work collaboratively together. And we're going to continue to ask and demand and show up and tell the truth. This document is their production of what they said this church could do. There are two things that are on our priority list right now from Churchwide under the DEI portfolio. One is addressing discipline concerns of leaders of color. This was adopted in 2019. They said that there's issues when it comes to leaders of color feeling safe enough and secure to bring issues against bishops, because we're talking about an issue of power. It's a power imbalance, right, for roster leaders. They need to know how to navigate the system. They feel like they need an advocate. How could Churchwide create a position that would create that kind of dynamic? An ombudsman position, basically. 2019, our community said that we needed this from a history of hurt. That is one of the first pieces that this work from the DEI portfolio, we are creating a task force. We have gotten the confirmation from the church council to move forward on that. We will launch our first task force meeting following the churchwide assembly. So this is one piece that our church can make a difference in securing. Can I get an applause for that? Because like, this is huge. And it's not for me. I'm saying it's for the people who did this. Not has nothing to do just because I'm here, kind of, sort of. But the other one is just joke. Addressing educational debt is the second thing that we want to look at. My colleague Adam DeHook, he is responsible for leading this work. I will partner with Adam in doing this. But what we have discovered as well from the churchwide office understanding around educational debt is that obviously our congregational support and our Synod guidelines are not always in alignment with leaders, especially leaders of color. I'm just going to look at that particular group in particular, and women of color especially. We're looking at the call process. Women of color tend to wait longer for the call, even though they're called to serve this entire church. But why is that? Leaders of color find themselves in communities that may be in deeper pockets of poverty, and they cannot pay their pastors or roster leaders the same guidelines for the synods that they serve. We have gaps, lots of gaps. We have 65 synods that may or may not have a plan to help with funding and supporting their seminary students in terms of educational debt loads. And we have people who need to retire, who want to retire, but can't. We have leaders at the poverty level. So this is work collectively that we have to look at and analyze together. So before we can think too far about future church, what we're trying to do is go back to this document and look at the existing inequities that are already causing church hurt. How can we do better? Because we have to. And how can we inspire newer leaders to come if we're not taking care of the leaders that are already here, right? So I just wanted to just give credit where credit is due. And I look forward to joining my colleagues in this work. So here's some numbers, because you need to know numbers. This is important, how we do our mission support together, because we certainly are a church of three expressions. And what you offer through Metro DC Synod, apologize, I've gotta make a quick adjustment here. Altogether, we raised or shared a total of over $40 million in mission support across the ELCA. And the Metro DC Synod mission support for 2021 was over $533,000. And we thank you so much for making that dream a reality for all of us at Churchwide. So thank you so much, Synod. And I say you're Churchwide because we do this together. When we give in our congregational settings, a portion of that stays in your congregation to do ministry where you are. A portion of that goes to your synod, and a portion of that goes to your churchwide organization. So we share in our mission support dollars collectively. And when Churchwide distributes these resources, this is what it breaks down to. 41% is for church growth across the United States. That's starting new communities, new congregations. 22% of that distribution goes to addressing worldwide issues and partnering with our international partners that we accompany. 37% is for developing future and current leaders, such as our mission developers and starting new congregational sites and ministries. And then a portion of that money stays right here for mission support. And those dollars that remain, that are stewarded by your synod, support the vital work of your synod staff and your synod ministries, such as walking alongside congregations, going through the call process, and accompanying congregations as they respond to the needs of their communities. In 2019, during a pandemic season, 2 new starts were birthed right here in the Synod. King of Kings alternate worshiping site in the Swahili Lutheran Ministry. Are they here in this room right now? Do we have any representatives? Yes, we see some hands waving. Thank you. Thank you. We also want to recognize the amazing leaders that are leading for change in this Synod. Pastor Sarah Schurslick of PCM Evangelical Lutheran Church in Alexandria. We want to thank you for your innovative leadership and the ways that you are bringing about new ministry ideas right here in the Synod as well. Thank you. And y'all are making new leaders. Let's see, is Catherine Wheeler in the room right now? Oh, there's Catherine. Hey, Catherine. Catherine Wheeler had dinner with Catherine last night, and she shared with me that there are 4, not 2. My report said 2. She said, oh no, Judith, there's 4. We have 4 ELCA Fund for Leaders that are going to seminary with full scholarships, full life scholarships. We have Emily DeMarco. Emily, are you here? Katie Evans. Katie's here. Hey, Katie. Oh, hey, Katie, that's right. Katie and I are together too. That's right. I saw Katie too last night. Crystal Waters. Where's Crystal? Hey, Crystal. How are you? All right. Can we just get the 4 of them to stand? This is impressive. All 4 of you. Thank you so much. That's a sign of a healthy Synod, that you were leaders encouraging leaders to go onto the path of becoming roster leaders. So this is a big deal. So we're excited that the Fund for Leaders will help support and assist a full ride tuition scholarship for those leaders. I also want to give a quick shout out for mission developers. Mission developers are very important leaders. Is Lisa Wackler and Aileen Mushi here? No? Well, here's the good thing about our mission developers. 2 of your leaders have been awarded mission developer status, and our mission developers have an entrepreneurial spirit. They're willing to start something brand new from the ground up and to create brand new communities. So it's so great to see that we've got some folks who are stepping into that space. And we also want to recognize that this Synod supports missionaries and young adults in global mission. Our young adults in global mission, also known as YAGMs, have an opportunity to do a year of service in one of our companion countries. And I just want to recognize Pastor Kyle and Ann Svenningson serving in Slovakia, Pastor Philip and Lou Marie Knudsen serving as regional rep for Namibia, Michael Busby and Helen Rios Carrillo serving in El Salvador, Pastor Stephen Dill, who is part of our Amparo, that's accompanying minors at the border, the regional rep for El Salvador, and Naomi Sevholm, who's serving in Central Europe. So we've got some amazing missionaries and leaders that this Synod is behind and supporting. So we give thanks for them as well. Can we? And so another way that we walk together is through our grants program, and our domestic hunger grant dollars have gone to support 4 different ministries and big dream projects right here in the Synod. Bright Paths, Lutheran Church of the Abiding Presence, St. Luke Lutheran Church, and the Washington Interfaith Network are all recipients of the work that we do through our grants programs. And because of a year-breaking record of generosity by ELCA members and supporters in 2020, the ELCA World Hunger was able to increase its program expenditure by $2 million in 2021, distributing more than $21.3 million in the United States and around the world. The program's growth has allowed the church to respond in vital, life-saving, and life-changing ways in some of the most challenging contexts during a time of extreme uncertainty and hardship. And just an example of some ways that our hunger dollars are used, they have been used to help with microloans, to build water wells, and to create programs for animal husbandry, as well as advocacy. So our dollars go to cover a wide host of different activities that happen across the ELCA. Our disaster response work that we do, we're here for the long term. You know, many organizations that we partner with, such as the American Red Cross, they're there for the immediate response. But the LDR reputation is there to really rebuild and help support communities well beyond after the time of some of the larger organizations have left. And so in 2021, we responded to disasters in 47 countries and 17 states across the United States. And that includes responding to tornadoes and floods and hurricanes, which we know continually plague and hit our communities. And we are grateful for the $230,000.272, every penny counts, every dollar counts, that the Metropolitan DC has been able to support through the Synod. So thank you so much for your LDR work. We're also responding, apologize, I'm getting tongue-tied. We're also responding to the humanitarian crisis coming out of the Ukraine. We are accompanying those who are fleeing their homes and providing aid and shelter with our partners on the ground. And we have raised over $8 million in response to the Ukrainian crisis. So thank you so much for being a church that is giving. COVID-19 response, we've been able to walk alongside over 63 of our synods that have responded for or received grant support. We have raised over $2.1 million in generosity from our ELCA members to assist with feeding ministries, to assist with hygiene kits for folks during the COVID-19 crisis. So there are a few resources I just want to lift up that have come from the churchwide organization to support our work together. The first is the Faith and Sexism. That's our most recent ELCA social statement. The study is now available. You can find that online. The Now is the Time study guide, which is a resource for the Declaration to People of African Descent and the Declaration of the Evangelical Lutheran Church to American and Alaskan Native peoples. So all three of these resources will help us to continue to advance our work together and to honor and recognize the indigenous voices of our church, the harm caused by the legacy of slavery and racism in this country, and the abuse caused by sexism within our society. So I encourage you to please look up those resources online. We also are recognizing as a church that June 17th will mark the 7th anniversary or remembrance of the Emmanuel 9 commemoration of the 9 martyrs that were killed in Charleston, South Carolina. There will be a launch for a year-long Bible study that will begin on the 17th. If you'd like to participate, this will be an online event that will be live streamed on C-SPAN. Bishop Eaton has been invited to be part of the first Bible study session, along with Bishop Curry, who will also join leaders of the AME community. So our work with our historic Black churches is also one of our key connectors in the work of ecumenism and interfaith work. The All Creation Sings is our most recent supplement to the ELCA Worship Materials Library. If you haven't picked up a copy of our latest resource, you can visit Augsburg Fortress and you can download that. There are new hymnals that are included in this, some new prayer liturgical materials that are also available. And for those going to Columbus, Ohio, I hope to see you as we gather for Embody the Word, the next ELCA Churchwide Assembly. Raise your hands if you're going, or wave your hands if any of you are going. Okay, I know I'll see some of you there for sure. Look forward to seeing you. Our next rostered ministers gathering will take place in 2023 in Phoenix, Arizona, from July 17th through the 20th. The theme for that gathering will be Rekindle the Gift Within You. And if you've never been to a youth gathering, we hope that you will consider joining us in New Orleans. It's going to be another hot time, another hot experience for us to gather, yes, in New Orleans in July, yes. Yep, we're really jazzed up to announce that one to you. You got that part? Sorry, it's in the script, I had to tell you. Anyway. Anyway, we'll be back in New Orleans. This will be my second or third time going back to New Orleans, joining our youth. If you haven't been to a youth gathering, over 30,000 of our young people gather for a time of prayer and worship and service, and we will be walking together. And leading up to the youth gathering, there are two important events to name. We had the Multicultural Youth Leadership Table, and the table, which is the table that represents our disabledly and differently abled youth. And those are both pre-events that lead up to the gathering. And that blesses and empowers young people who will live with a wide range of physical, cognitive, and emotional disabilities so that they might grow as faithful and wise and courageous witnesses for the love of Christ. And there's some folks here in the Synod who help make all of this work happen at the church-wide organization and beyond. And we just like to acknowledge their presence. They are here. Mr. Kevin D. Anderson, who is currently serving in church council. We thank you, Kevin. Kevin is also a member of the church-wide Assembly Reference and Council Committee. Mr. David L. Lewis, if David is here, he serves on the Committee on Discipline. I don't know, David, if you're here. Mr. Samuel P. Swinson Reinhold is on the nominating committee as well, along with Mr. N. Uzumo Araguzo, as well as Catherine E. Bearwald, who serves as one of the board members for the Mission Investment Fund Board of Directors. So we just want to give just a thank you for all of the leaders who show up and support the different committees of the church council, those who help make the work happen at our church-wide assemblies. And I'd also like to give a special shout out to the Director for Evangelical Mission, who is also my church-wide colleague. Reverend Lamar Bailey helps to shepherd the congregations here in the Synod to help us become more diverse church, to help plant new starts around multiculturalism and ethnic-specific communities. So can we thank Reverend Lamar Bailey for his work? And last but not least, I just want to give a special thanks to you, Bishop Ortiz. As I said, we met when you were in seminary many years ago, and we have walked together and worked together and prayed together. And I thank you for your leadership. You are such a gift to this church. And thank you so much to all of you for your generosity in supporting the ELCA church-wide organization, all of our ministries. There is nothing like being church together. And I thank you so much, Metro DC, for your hospitality and your love and generosity. Take care.